My ex stole my dog after our breakup and told me, "You'll never see him again." 2 years later, I found him at a local shelter after she dumped him there to travel. I adopted him back and mailed her a photo of us captioned, "He found his way home." You didn't. It's strange how someone can walk out of your life and take something that wasn't theirs to begin with. Not just memories, not just closure, but something real, breathing, innocent. For me, that something was Max, my dog, my best friend. We adopted him together from a rescue 3 years into our relationship. He was a 2-year-old golden retriever who'd been through a rough start, matted fur, anxious eyes, and a tremble in his walk that made you want to kneel beside him and promise he was safe now. And we did. Or I did, at least. I meant it. Back then, things were still good between me and Jenna. We lived in a little apartment downtown, fought over takeout more than anything serious, and spent our weekends watching true crime shows with Max curled up between us. She always said she wasn't a dog person, but she loved him, at least in the way people love things that make them feel better about themselves. Looking back, I don't know when it all started to rot. Maybe it was when I got laid off. Or when her photography Instagram started gaining traction and she realized she could get free stays at hotels just for tagging them. The more her world turned into curated images and filtered brunches, the more mine felt like a grayscale version of what we used to be. The fights got louder, longer, more bitter. And Max, he felt it. He always did. He'd slink out of the room when our voices rose, curl up under the coffee table with his paws over his nose like the sound physically hurt. The night she left, it wasn't even a full-blown argument. It was one of those quiet, ice-cold standoffs where everything's been said too many times and nothing lands anymore. "I can't do this with you," she said, stuffing a few clothes into her duffel. "You drain me." I didn't fight her. Maybe I should have. I just stood there, nodding, numb. She walked out with her boots echoing on the hardwood like punctuation marks at the end of a bitter essay. Then she turned back, walked to the couch, clipped Max's leash on. "Where are you going?" I asked. She didn't look at me. "Taking Max. He needs stability. He's mine. We got him together. He sleeps in my bed. I walk him every day. You haven't even filled his water bowl in months." "I'm not arguing," she snapped. "You're in no position to care for anything right now." And then came the knife twist. The words I'll never forget. "You'll never see him again." Then she left. Just like that. The silence afterward wasn't quiet. It howled. I stood there, staring at the door like it might open again. It didn't. I sat on the floor, where Max's bed used to be. It smelled like him. I cried into the fabric until my throat felt raw and my chest ached. I tried calling her, messaging, emailing. I even sent a letter. No response. I looked up pet custody laws. Turns out if both parties are on the adoption papers, it gets murky. She knew what she was doing. She always knew how to twist the knife and make it look like you handed it to her. For a while, I thought maybe she'd come around. Maybe she'd realize he missed me. Maybe she'd drop him off at my place one day and ring the doorbell and run. I imagined it over and over. But months passed. I saw her posting beach shots and hotel spas on Instagram. Max was nowhere. It was like he'd been erased. I stopped checking after a while. The pain of not knowing, of wondering, was starting to rot me from the inside. I couldn't walk past a dog park without my eyes scanning for golden fur. Every bark made me turn my head. Every soft whine on the street made my chest seize. I threw myself into work, took on long hours, moved to a new place, grew a beard, deleted old photos. But I couldn't delete him. How do you erase the part of your life that made you feel the most seen? The first year was the hardest. The second one turned into a dull ache. Life moved on. It always does. I dated. Briefly. Nothing serious. They'd ask about the dog hair on my clothes, and I'd just shrug. Had a dog once, I'd say. I never said his name. Then, one Thursday afternoon, 2 years almost to the day, I got a text from a friend who volunteered at the local shelter. "Hey, is this your Max?" There was a photo. Golden fur. Lopsided grin. Those same deep eyes. My hands shook. I zoomed in. I knew that dog. There was a scar above his right paw from when he tripped running after a squirrel at the lake. That wasn't just a dog. That was my dog. Max. He was back. But the question was, why was he in a shelter? And when I found out, everything changed. I drove to the shelter like I was on autopilot. I don't even remember parking. I must have left the car half crooked, engine still ticking when I ran through the doors. A volunteer at the front desk looked up. "Can I help you?" "Max Golden Retriever." I think he was brought in recently. My voice cracked. She typed on her computer. Do you know when he was brought in? Yesterday, maybe? My friend said. Her eyes lit up as she scrolled. Max, yep. Neutered male, around 4. Came in yesterday afternoon. No microchip, no collar. My heart stopped. No collar. She nodded. He was just left at the side entrance. A note pinned to his crate said, can't keep him. Please find him a good home. No name. No number. Nothing. I didn't hear the rest. My pulse drowned her out. She just dumped him. Like he was a coat she didn't wear anymore. Like he was clutter. I followed her to the kennels, where barking echoed off the concrete walls. My palms were sweating. My heart was hammering. And then she stopped in front of a door. He's been quiet. A little skittish, but gentle. Do you want to? The door opened, and there he was. Max. He was curled in the corner, back to the wall. I was watching every movement like they might mean danger. His fur was duller than I remembered. He looked thinner, tired, but still him. I dropped to my knees and whispered, Maxie? He looked up. For a second, he didn't move. His ears flicked. His tail gave a cautious twitch. Then he stood, slowly, uncertain. Come here, buddy. It's me. Then he sprinted. Full force. Right into my arms. He was crying. That strange, high-pitched sound dogs make when they're overwhelmed. And I was crying too. I buried my face in his fur, and he licked at my ears, my cheeks, every part of me he could reach. It was like he couldn't believe I was real. Like he was checking I hadn't vanished again. The volunteer wiped her eyes. He remembers you, she said softly. I never forgot him, I replied. Back home, he was different. He wouldn't let me out of his sight. Not even to go to the bathroom. He slept on the floor beside my bed, not in it like he used to. He flinched when loud trucks passed outside. And once, when a neighbor's dog barked too loud, Max cowered in the corner, tail tucked. I didn't push him. I let him come back to life in his own time. I fed him steak the first night, rubbed coconut oil into his cracked paws, and took him for slow walks. Just us. Quiet. Gentle. And then I did the one thing I told myself I wouldn't. I looked up Jenna's Instagram. It was still public. She was in Bali, posing by waterfalls. Sunset yoga. Sponsored posts about letting go of toxic people. Not a single photo of Max. Not even a caption that hinted he ever existed. Except one. A story highlight, buried near the bottom, titled, Goodbye Broken Heart. It was a 2-second clip of Max in the backseat of a car, staring out the window. She was filming him with some sappy song playing in the background. The caption, when you know it's for the best. That was it. That was her goodbye. I sat there, shaking, phone in my hand. Max curled at my feet. He was looking up at me with those trusting eyes, still wagging his tail just because I existed. She'd ripped him out of my life. Lied to me. Ghosted me. And then discarded him when he no longer fit her curated little world. And I remembered what she said, all those years ago. You'll never see him again. Except I had. And he came running back to me. I didn't think I wanted revenge. Not really. I thought I was past it. But then something in me shifted. She'd taken years from me. Grief, therapy, heartbreak. She'd stolen not just my dog, but my peace. My ability to trust. My sense of control. And now, she was gallivanting around the world like nothing happened. Not a consequence in sight. I couldn't let that be the end. So I made a plan. It wasn't about screaming or shaming her online. It wasn't even about telling the world what she did. It was about giving her one moment. One perfect moment of impact. So I waited. I watched her posts. I followed her brand collaborations, her sponsorships, her planned returns. She had a homecoming Q&A live stream scheduled 3 weeks out. She was coming back. She booked a booth at a local lifestyle expo to talk about her wellness journey. Perfect. Max and I would be there. The Wellness Expo was being held in the downtown convention center. One of those live your best life events filled with yoga mats, essential oils, and influencers trying to monetize their glow. Jenna had promoted her booth online as part of her Emotional Clarity brand. She was launching a podcast, apparently, something about healing, detachment, and self-love. The irony would have been laughable if it didn't sting so much. But I didn't want her to know I was coming. Not yet. I signed up as a vendor under a side project of mine, one I'd been building slowly over the past year. Pet wellness. It was simple, legitimate, and perfectly positioned. I even used a different name for registration, MW Rescue Services. I designed banners, ordered business cards, and booked a booth directly across from hers. Max came too. He wore a red bandana with "Adopted and Loved" embroidered on it. I'd cleaned him up, brushed him out, even had a little vest for him to lie on. He looked healthy again, still a bit reserved around crowds, but calmer, stronger. His eyes scanned every face, tail wagging hesitantly. He didn't fully trust the world, but he trusted me. That morning, as we set up, I kept watching the empty space across from us. At 9:47 a.m., she arrived. Jenna, still tall, still curated, hair in a soft bun, neutral-tone jumpsuit, Starbucks in hand. Her assistant trailed behind, wheeling in a cart of merchandise and branded tote bags. She looked right at me and didn't recognize me. Not at first. There was a flicker, some distant memory flashing across her face, but she smiled politely and turned away, focused on her setup. And Max? Max stared. He didn't bark. He didn't growl. But his whole body tensed like he recognized her scent and wasn't sure if it meant abandonment again. I bent down, whispering in his ear, "It's okay, buddy. You're home." For the next few hours, I handed out pamphlets, talked to dog lovers, watched her take selfies and laugh and do her whole peace and light act. Every time she looked over, I smiled. A small, calm, knowing smile. She'd squint occasionally, like something was tickling the back of her mind. And then, at 2:12 p.m., she walked across the aisle. "Hi there," she said, in that influencer voice. "Your booth's adorable. What's your organization about?" I looked right at her. Deadpan. "I help reunite dogs with the people who love them." She blinked. Her head tilted just slightly, and her eyes flicked to Max. Then it hit her. I saw it. Her mouth opened, closed. She stammered, "Is that—" "Wait." Max tilted his head. I said, "His name's Max." She looked like someone had pulled the floor out from under her. I thought you moved." "I did." "And how is he?" "You dumped him at a shelter," I said softly. "No collar. No ID. Just left him." People around us had started to glance over. The expo wasn't crowded, but Jenna's voice always drew attention. I didn't raise mine. I didn't need to. She looked around nervously. "Can we maybe talk somewhere else?" "No," I said. "Everything I need to say, I'm saying here." She stepped closer. "Look, I didn't know what to do. I couldn't keep him, my landlord in Bali. You could have called," I cut in. "You could have messaged. You told me I'd never see him again. And then you threw him away." "It wasn't like that." Max flinched at her voice. I knelt, stroking his fur, and said, "It was exactly like that. But you were wrong." He found his way back. Then I reached into my display box and pulled out a framed photo. Me and Max, curled on the couch, both grinning like idiots. I'd had it printed weeks ago, knowing this might happen. I handed it to her. The caption printed at the bottom read, "He found his way home. You didn't." Her face turned pale. She tried to laugh it off. "So this is what? Some kind of weird revenge? You're seriously doing this?" "No," I said. "This is closure. For me. For him. And maybe, if you're lucky, for you." She set the photo down and walked off without another word. I didn't follow her. Max didn't watch her go. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like something had been taken from me. I felt whole. The rest of the expo was a blur of conversation and lightness. People petted Max, kids asked to take photos. I told his story to a few gentle souls who genuinely cared, and no one said the word revenge. They said healing. They said hope. And when I packed up that evening, Max jumped into the passenger seat like he'd done it 100 times before. I glanced over at him. "You're safe now, buddy." He nuzzled into my arm. We drove home in silence. No music. No distractions. Just the sound of him breathing easy, like the weight was finally off his chest too. The morning after the expo, I woke up to Max pawing gently at my side. His tail thumped a few times, then he rested his head on my chest. It had been over 2 years since I'd felt this kind of peace. No calls from HR, no screaming matches, no surprise breakups or gaslighting texts. Just quiet. Stillness. Max, finally breathing without fear. We took a walk along the lake path near my building. The air was crisp, early spring. Ducks floated by in the shallows, and Max, now back to his full strength, trotted beside me with that gentle bounce in his step. He'd stopped flinching at every loud sound. He greeted strangers with curiosity instead of caution. It was like watching someone slowly rediscover themselves. And me? I was doing the same. What Jenna never understood, what most people didn't, is that Max had been my anchor. After my dad died, after my ex before her cheated, after I lost my job during the layoffs, it was Max who got me out of bed. Who waited at the door when I came home late, his tail a metronome of love. Who licked the tears off my cheek the night Jenna screamed that I was too soft for the real world. She took him because she knew that. Because hurting Max meant hurting me in the one place I still felt human. And that's why finding him, getting him back, felt like reclaiming the version of myself she tried to erase. After the expo, I didn't hear from Jenna directly, but it didn't take long for the fallout to start trickling in. Her podcast's Instagram comments were flooded. Apparently, someone had recognized her at the expo, heard our exchange, or caught a glimpse of the photo I'd handed her. Word spread. One user wrote, "Hard to take self-love advice from someone who abandons dogs and lies about it." Another said, "You ghosted your ex and dumped his dog at a shelter, and now you're selling healing kits? Girl, please." I didn't comment. I didn't even like the posts. I just watched quietly as the persona crumbled, brick by performative brick. Max and I returned to our quiet routine. Morning walks. Late-night couch naps. I started sleeping without waking up in a cold sweat, wondering what I'd done wrong to deserve it all. One afternoon, a thick envelope arrived in the mail. No return address. I opened it slowly, half expecting legal threats. Instead, it was a handwritten letter. From Jenna. "Evan, you don't have to read this. I wouldn't blame you if you threw it away, but I need to say it. For once in my life, I want to take accountability. I was cruel. I was selfish. I didn't know how to be in a relationship with someone kind because I thought kindness was weakness. It wasn't until I lost everything that I realized you were the strongest person I'd ever met. I didn't abandon Max because I hated him. I abandoned him because he reminded me of you. And I couldn't carry the weight of what I did. So I ran, like I always do. Seeing you again, seeing him happy, healthy, loved. I felt like I was looking at a life I could have had if I hadn't been so busy trying to control everything. I'm not asking for forgiveness, but I am saying thank you. You saved him. You saved yourself. I hope I can do the same one day." I sat with that letter for a long time. Reread it twice. Let it sink in. Then I folded it up and placed it in a drawer. Not to forget it, but because it no longer defined anything. It was strange, honestly, not the revenge part, that had already happened, quietly and with dignity. But the closure, the full circle moment, it felt complete, like the story had finally run out of pages. Still, I wasn't done moving forward. Inspired by everything I'd seen at the expo, I finally did something I'd been toying with for months. I launched a small side business focused on reunifying rescue dogs with previous owners who had lost them due to eviction, abuse, or emergencies. We started small, just me and a buddy from college who owed me a favor. But we posted Max's story online with his little red bandana, and it went viral. People donated. Foster parents volunteered. Shelter staff reached out. Within weeks, we'd helped 3 families reconnect with pets they never thought they'd see again. Max became our unofficial mascot. He came to every pop-up event. Kids petted him. People cried into his fur. And not once did he flinch. It turns out, kindness isn't weakness. It's survival. It's strength without ego. Compassion without condition. And sometimes, it's revenge, but the quiet kind. The kind that heals you while holding others accountable. One night, a woman in her 70s hugged me outside an adoption center. She'd just been reunited with her cat after 8 months apart. She said, "You have a good soul, young man. You saved her." I shook my head and pointed at Max, curled in the back seat. He saved me first. A few weeks after the letter arrived, I found myself standing in the same shelter where I'd first seen Max's name scribbled in smudged marker on a kennel tag. The staff had invited me back, not just to thank me, but to ask if I'd be open to becoming a volunteer trainer. Apparently, the story of Max's return had inspired more than just sympathy. It had inspired hope. And more people were showing up, hoping they might find their own Max too. I said yes, of course. It was strange, walking the same aisles where my heart had nearly collapsed 2 years earlier. Back then, the barking had felt overwhelming, every yelp and cry like a punch to the gut. I'd barely held it together when I saw him, filthy, confused, his ears twitching at the sound of my voice. Now, the sound of barking didn't scare me. It was just the sound of animals waiting for their second chance. One of the shelter workers, a soft-spoken woman named Carla, asked me what kept me going through it all. "Love," I said. "Stubborn, infuriating, irrational love." She smiled and nodded like she understood. And I think she did. Anyone who works in rescue probably knows what it's like to hold on to hope longer than you should. Later that night, Max and I lay on the couch, his head on my thigh. I was scrolling through emails when a familiar name popped up, Jenna. I stared at it for a long second. I hadn't heard from her since the letter. This wasn't the same tone, though. No apology, no warmth. Just a subject line, legal concern, defamation. I opened it slowly, heart thudding, but the contents made me laugh out loud. Apparently, she was upset that someone had tagged her name in a viral TikTok video about Max's rescue. The video didn't name her, didn't even mention her, but one of her old followers had pieced the story together and posted screenshots of her old podcast episodes alongside clips of Max's adoption day. She was threatening to sue for defamation if I didn't make a public statement clarifying she had not abandoned Max out of malice. I stared at the screen, blinking. She wanted a retraction. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even surprised. I just felt tired. For a moment, I thought about responding, writing something scathing and poetic, reminding her of what she'd done, of the voicemail she left the night she took Max that said, "If you cared more about me than that mutt, maybe we'd still be together." Of the shelter intake form that said, "Owner moving abroad, no longer wanted." But then I closed the tab, and I did nothing. Because the difference between then and now was simple. I didn't need revenge anymore. I'd already won. 1 month later, I stood in front of a small group of people at a community center where we'd just held our first home again adoption event. Max sat at my feet in his red bandana, calm as ever. "I want to thank you all for being here," I said, holding the mic. "I know what it's like to lose someone you love, not because of fate or illness, but because someone made a selfish choice. I know how it feels to think they're gone forever." I looked down at Max, then back at the crowd. But I also know what it feels like when you get that second chance, and how healing it can be, not just for you, but for them too. The applause was soft but genuine. A few people wiped their eyes. A little girl in the front row held up her new puppy and whispered, "We're gonna be best friends forever." I smiled. That's the dream. That night, back home, I sat down and wrote something I never thought I'd write. A goodbye letter. Not to Jenna, not to Max, to the version of myself that let other people define his worth. Dear Evan, you weren't weak. You weren't soft. You were grieving. You were hurting. You were human. And they tried to make you feel small for that. But you held on. You rebuilt. You saved someone who needed saving. And in doing so, you saved yourself. You can let go now. The pain, the anger, even the fear. You're not that man anymore. You are home. I closed the laptop, pulled Max a little closer, and let the quiet settle in. A few days later, I got one last letter. This time, it was from a high school classmate I hadn't heard from in years. She'd seen Max's story in the news and recognized us both. She said she remembered how I used to walk him before school, how Jenna would roll her eyes and say, "It's just a dog." She was wrong, the classmate wrote. He wasn't just a dog. He was your whole heart. She ended with a simple line, "You got the better ending." And I did. Because I didn't need to see Jenna fall to rise. I didn't need her approval, or her understanding, or even her apology. I just needed Max. I needed to believe that no matter how badly someone tries to erase the parts of you that love deeply, that care too much, that feel too strongly, those parts still matter. Those parts are what make us who we are. And when you stop running from them, when you embrace them instead, you win. Even if the world never knows it. Even if the only proof is a wagging tail, a warm nose, and a look that says, "I'm home." Because some revenge stories don't end in courtroom drama or viral takedowns. Some end with a dog on your couch, snoring softly. And that's enough. That's everything.